Before this video disappears into the dark, subscribe, like, and comment now. Because once this story pulls you in, there's no turning back. The alarm inside ADX Florence didn't scream. It throbbed, a low, pulsing sound that meant something had gone wrong where nothing ever went wrong. At 2:17 a.m., guards froze mid-step as steel doors sealed automatically. In cell block D, designed to hold men the system believed could never be controlled, a body lay motionless on the concrete floor of a cell that was supposed to be impossible to tamper with. The inmate was Raymond Pike. Officially, he was already a dead man, sentenced to die for orchestrating a multi-state execution-style killing spree years earlier. But Pike hadn't been executed. He had been waiting. And now, inside the most secure prison in America, he was dead anyway. ADX Florence rises out of the Colorado mountains like a concrete scar. No bars. No windows you can touch. Just silence, isolation, and control measured down to the second. Men here don't whisper. They calculate. That's why Pike's death sent shockwaves through federal law enforcement within minutes. Death row-linked inmates don't just die inside ADX. Not without a reason. When Special Agent Mara Klein arrived before sunrise, Frost still clung to the razor wire. She'd spent a decade chasing organized crime, and another 5 years studying how power operates inside prisons. The first thing she noticed wasn't Pike's body. It was his hands, fingers curled inward, as if he'd been clutching something that wasn't there anymore. The official report came fast. Natural causes pending autopsy. Klein didn't buy it. Pike had been 46, physically stable, medically monitored daily. And there was something else. On the inside of his left wrist, barely visible, were 3 faint inkeds. Prison tattoos were common. These weren't. They were too precise. As the investigation quietly opened, another name surfaced, Elias Crow. Crow was housed in a separate wing, under even stricter isolation. Like Pike, he had been sentenced to death for crimes that stunned the nation. Unlike Pike, Crow had never spoken publicly. No interviews. No letters. No visitors. He was known among inmates as a ghost with influence. Then there was the third man, Victor Halvorsen. Older. Smarter. A former financial strategist tied to a murder-for-hire network that spanned Europe and the U.S. Halvorsen wasn't officially on death row, but multiple sealed indictments suggested it was only a matter of time. The 3 men had never been documented as connected. But ADX Florence is a pressure chamber. Even silence leaves fingerprints. Klein began reviewing surveillance. Every inch of the prison was watched, every movement logged. Pike hadn't left his cell in 72 hours. No guard had entered. No inmate contact. Yet something was missing. During a routine inventory, officers noticed Pike's legal paperwork, meticulously organized for years, had vanished. Not misplaced. Removed. As word of Pike's death traveled through federal channels, something else happened. Elias Crow requested a meeting with his attorney. That alone was unusual. Crow hadn't spoken to legal counsel in over 4 years. The request was marked urgent. Before the meeting could happen, a corrections officer named Daniel Mercer failed to report for duty. Mercer had worked cell block D for 6 months. No prior issues. No warnings. His locker was found open. Empty. By now, the case had teeth. Klein pushed deeper, pulling sealed files tied to Pike's original conviction. Buried in old evidence was a list, never introduced at trial. Names. Dates. Offshore accounts. The kind of information that could destroy powerful people if it ever surfaced. Written in the margins was a phrase that made her blood run cold. 3 no. 1 falls first. At 9:41 p.m. that night, as guards conducted a lockdown check, a red light flashed outside Victor Halvorsen's cell. Inside, they found him standing calmly, facing the wall. On his bunk lay a single sheet of paper folded neatly in half. When Klein opened it, she realized Pike's death wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Because written in Halvorsen's handwriting were 3 words that changed the entire case. He wasn't supposed to die. The paper in Halvorsen's cell was barely warm when Agent Mara Klein read it again. He wasn't supposed to die. Not murdered. Not killed. As if Raymond Pike's death had disrupted a plan still in motion. ADX Florence tightened instantly. Movement schedules were altered. Meals delayed. Attorneys stalled. Officially, nothing was wrong. Unofficially, every agency with a stake in Pike's past was now listening. Halvorsen finally spoke during his interview, his voice calm, almost bored. He didn't deny knowing Pike. He didn't confirm it either. He only smiled and asked Klein a question that didn't belong in a prison interrogation. Did they tell you what Pike was buying with his time? Klein pressed him. Halvorsen leaned back, wrists chained to the table, eyes sharp. Pike wasn't waiting to die, he said. He was waiting to trade. Trade was a dangerous word. In federal cases, it meant leverage. Deals. Names that could unravel institutions. Klein dug into Pike's final months. His behavior had changed, fewer appeals, fewer complaints, more requests for archived case materials that had nothing to do with his conviction. Financial crimes. European shell companies. Names of prosecutors who'd since climbed political ladders. Then came the missing guard. Daniel Mercer's disappearance was quietly reclassified from failure to report to person of interest. His bank records showed a sudden influx of money, small amounts, spread across weeks, carefully disguised. Not enough to raise flags on their own. Enough to mean someone was paying him to look the other way, or to carry something out. Surveillance footage revealed Mercer's last confirmed sighting, 2 nights before Pike's death, pausing outside cell block D longer than protocol allowed. The camera glitched for 12 seconds. A rare malfunction. Convenient. As Klein followed the money trail, she found a second anomaly. Elias Crow's attorney meeting, still pending, had been requested using an outdated authorization code, one that hadn't been valid in years. Someone inside the system had reactivated it. Crow was pulling strings without speaking. That night, the autopsy report landed. Cause of death: cardiac failure. No signs of struggle. No toxins detected. Clean. Too clean. But buried in the fine print was a note from the medical examiner. Unusual stress indicators inconsistent with natural onset. Fear could kill, especially the kind that comes with certainty. Klein revisited Pike's cell. Under the harsh, white light, she noticed something overlooked before, a hairline crack along the edge of the concrete bed. Prison architecture didn't crack easily. She ordered a scan. Inside the bed frame was a hollowed compartment. Empty now, but traces remained. Fibers from paper treated with polymer coating. The kind used for documents meant to survive fire, water, and time. Pike had hidden something. Someone had taken it. At 3:06 a.m., an alert hit the system. Elias Crow had collapsed in his cell. Alive, but unresponsive. No injuries. No explanation. He was transferred to the prison medical unit under heavy guard. When Klein arrived, Crow's eyes fluttered open. He looked directly at her, a faint smile forming. "They're accelerating," he whispered. "You're late." Before she could respond, the monitors spiked. Crow lost consciousness again. The pattern was forming now. Pike dead. Crow silenced. Halvorsen untouched, but exposed. 3 men linked not by crime, but by knowledge. Something they shared that extended beyond their sentences. Klein pushed for emergency access to sealed international records. What she found rewrote the case entirely. 15 years earlier, before any of the 3 men were arrested, there had been an unofficial task force, off the books, targeting transatlantic criminal financiers. The task force had been shut down abruptly. Evidence buried. Careers protected. Pike. Crow. Halvorsen. All 3 had been informants at different stages. All 3 had been promised protection that never came. Someone high enough had decided it was safer to lock them away forever. At dawn, a recovery team searching the prison perimeter made a discovery in a restricted drainage tunnel. A uniform jacket, Daniel Mercer's badge, and a burner phone wrapped in plastic. The last outgoing message had been sent hours earlier. It contained a location pin, inside ADX Florence, and a single line of text. Package delivered. 1 more remains. Klein stared at the screen, the weight of it settling in her chest. Pike hadn't been the target. He'd been the warning. And if the message was true, the next death wasn't a question of if. It was who. The lockdown order came too late. By the time Agent Mara Klein reached ADX Florence's command center, every screen showed the same thing: stillness. No movement. No alarms. Just men sealed inside concrete boxes designed to outlast chaos. That's when the call came in from the medical unit. Elias Crow was gone. Not dead.
Gone.
His restraints lay neatly on the bed. The door logs showed no manual override. No breach. No escort authorization. Crow had vanished from the most controlled environment in the federal system without triggering a single alert. For Klein, the realization was brutal and immediate. This was never about killing them. It was about erasing them. Halvorsen understood at the moment she stepped into his cell. He was sitting on the edge of his bunk, calm, waiting, as if he'd already accepted the ending. Crow was the leverage, he said quietly. Pike was the test. I'm the loose end. Klein demanded answers. Halvorsen finally gave them. Years ago, the three men had been used as confidential assets by a covert interagency operation targeting financial pipelines that funded international violence and political corruption. The money led somewhere dangerous, into institutions that weren't supposed to be touched. Judges, intelligence contractors, elected officials. When the trail climbed too high, the task force was buried. Pike, Crow, and Halvorsen were arrested on charges strong enough to hold, but incomplete enough to ensure silence. Death row wasn't punishment. It was containment. But Pike changed his mind, Halvorsen said. He started rebuilding the evidence. Not to save himself. To make sure it couldn't be buried again. That was the package. The missing documents. The reason Mercer had been paid. The reason Crow was extracted instead of killed. Someone wanted the evidence controlled, not destroyed. As if summoned by the truth, alarms finally erupted. A perimeter breach near the utility corridor. Guards moved in force. Klein ran. They found Daniel Mercer alive, hiding in plain sight, in a decommissioned maintenance hub beneath the prison. He didn't resist. He didn't deny anything. He looked relieved. I didn't know who they were, Mercer said. Only that they knew everything about me. The extraction had been surgical. Contractors with valid credentials that traced back to shell agencies. Crow had been sedated, moved, and erased from the system. Officially, he'd suffered a fatal medical event. His body would never be found. And the evidence? Mercer told Klein the truth she'd already feared. Pike had never intended to hand it over to one person. He'd fragmented it. Encrypted copies sent to multiple dead drops, some domestic, some overseas. Insurance, which meant Pike had won. Hours later, Victor Halvorsen was transferred under unprecedented secrecy. Not to another prison. To a federal safe facility that didn't officially exist. His charges were quietly reevaluated. His death sentence suspended. Deals were made in rooms without windows. ADX Florence returned to silence. Weeks passed. The public was told nothing beyond a brief statement. An inmate death due to natural causes, an internal review ongoing. No mention of Crow. No mention of Mercer. No mention of the task force. Then the leaks began. Financial records surfaced in Europe. Names resigned for personal reasons. A congressional committee announced a sudden investigation into historical prosecutorial misconduct. No one connected it publicly to ADX Florence. But Klein knew. 3 months later, she received a package at her home. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of polymer-coated paper and a burner phone that rang once before going dead. On the paper were 3 inked dots. Below them, a line of text. You don't bury the truth. You only delay it. Raymond Pike had died on a concrete floor, but his plan had survived him. Elias Crow had vanished, but not without consequences. Victor Halvorsen had escaped death row, but not the weight of what he'd helped unleash. And somewhere beyond the reach of any prison, the final pieces were still moving. They thought the danger ended inside ADX Florence. They were wrong. If this story shook you, the next one will haunt you even more. Don't disappear now. subscribe, stay with us, and step back into the darkness when the next case begins.